The millionaire's baby was starving until the cleaning lady did the unthinkable. Before we begin, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It's always special to see how far our stories travel. And if you enjoy emotional love stories, make sure to subscribe to the channel. That way, you help this space grow and encourage me to keep bringing you even more heart-touching narratives. Adam Reynolds' mansion looked like a perfect portrait of American wealth. Polished marble, soft lighting, furniture handpicked by renowned designers. Nothing there gave away the emotional chaos hidden behind closed doors. In the nursery, the scene was completely different. The light carpet was stained with small splashes of milk. Adam's clothes bore dried formula stains, and his once impeccable face now carried deep dark circles. He paced back and forth with Oliver in his arms, rocking the baby in an almost automatic motion. The loud crying filled the entire room, echoing through the long, cold hallways of the house. It was a sound that pierced Adam's chest as if each scream was a reminder of the most traumatic night of his life. "Please, little one, just a little," he murmured hoarsely, trying to stay calm as he raised the bottle. His blue-gray eyes were teary, mixing frustration with a weariness that seemed to grow by the day. When he tried to feed Oliver, the baby sucked for a few seconds, but the reflux came quickly. A stream of formula came back up, dirtying the dress shirt Adam couldn't even remember putting on. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, trying not to lose control in front of such a small, fragile being. "I'm sorry, I really am," he whispered, pressing the baby protectively against his chest. It wasn't an apology to the child. It was to the wife he hadn't been able to save. The trauma of that loss returned every time Oliver cried like that, as if each spit-up was a cruel reminder that, despite all his wealth, he couldn't give his son the most basic thing: relief. His phone vibrated on the nightstand. He ignored it. He didn't have the energy to deal with investors or meetings. The only thing that mattered in that moment was the small, restless body in his arms. He walked to the window, watching the light rain beginning to fall over Austin. Outside, the world kept moving. Cars passing, people working, life going on. Inside the mansion, time felt stuck in a loop of exhaustion. "I don't know what else to do, Ollie," he admitted, letting the vulnerability seep into his voice. "I've tried every formula, every brand, every special bottle. Nothing works for you. I promised I'd take care of you, but I'm failing again." The baby cried even louder, arching his tiny body the way he always did when the reflux flared up. Adam felt a warm wave of frustration and helplessness rise in his chest. He rocked the baby gently, but his hands were shaking. The entire house felt too big for a man so alone. The silence after each reflux episode weighed heavier than the crying itself, creating an emptiness his fortune could never fill. Finally, Oliver calmed down for a few seconds, just long enough to breathe in a little peace. Adam rested his face on top of his son's head, breathing in the baby scent mixed with a faint trace of milk. These small moments of peace were rare, but they were the only thing keeping him going. A single tear slid silently down his face. It wasn't just exhaustion. It was fear. It was grief. It was the weight of raising a child alone while trying to appear strong for the entire world. "I'd give anything to know how to help you," he said quietly, like a promise whispered to the wind tapping against the window. And that night, as he tried to put Oliver to sleep, Adam realized something he had never dared to admit. Despite all the money, all the structure, and all the hired specialists, he was completely lost. No amount of wealth could fill the absence of someone who knew how to nurture, care, and truly see what he, no matter how hard he tried, couldn't see on his own. The next morning dawned gray in Austin. painting the sky with a melancholy tone that seemed to match the lives of those who carried more weight in their hearts than in their arms. Grace left her small apartment with Emma nestled against her chest, wrapped in a pink blanket. The cold air hit the young single mother's face, bringing with it that constant sense of responsibility that never let her rest. Emma was tiny, with round, soft cheeks and green eyes that mirrored her own. Even so young, she carried the serenity of someone who fully trusted the embrace that held her. Grace ran her hand through her daughter's light brown hair, adjusting the little hat gently as she walked toward the community daycare. It was simple, with walls painted with children's drawings and toys worn from use. As she handed Emma over to the caregiver, Grace took a deep breath, as if leaving behind a piece of her own heart. "Please take good care of her," she said with a tired smile. "You can count on it," the caregiver replied, noticing the worry in Grace's eyes. "She'll be fine." Grace nodded, but as she walked away, her steps faltered. She was always afraid she wasn't doing enough. Afraid of failing her daughter, the same way life had failed her when it took Daniel away so soon. The bus that took her to the millionaire neighborhood felt like it was crossing into a parallel world. The houses were huge, surrounded by pristine gardens and luxury cars parked in wide driveways. When she got off at her stop, Grace pulled the strap of her backpack tighter, trying to convince herself that she had the strength to get through another day. The morning cold felt smaller than the sense of not belonging that tightened in her chest. As she passed through the automatic gate of the Reynolds mansion, the grandeur of the place made her swallow hard. The facade was modern, with clean lines, massive glass panels, and solid wood doors. The floor gleamed so brightly it nearly reflected the heavy sky. Inside, the scent of expensive cleaning products clashed with the soft lavender aroma she used at home. The furniture looked new, expensive, arranged perfectly, as if none of it had been touched in months. As she walked through the main hall, it felt like every detail screamed that she didn't belong there. The contrast between her simple clothes, worn jeans, stained sneakers, and a cotton shirt tucked beneath her coat, and the sophistication of the place made her stomach twist. She took a deep breath, trying to silence the thought that always came at moments like this: you don't belong in this world. She held her cleaning company clipboard and headed toward the room she was supposed to clean first. But before she could take a single step, the sound came. A high-pitched, strong cry that pierced through the walls. It was a cry of pain, not tiredness. The cry of someone desperately trying to relieve something they couldn't express. Grace stopped immediately. Her body reacted before her mind. Her heart tightened so hard that her hands trembled. She recognized that sound. It wasn't just a baby crying. It was the cry of unmet hunger, of discomfort, of distress. She looked up at the ceiling, where the sound seemed to echo more intensely. Oliver's room was upstairs. The same crying she'd heard the day before, the same one that carried a different weight, as if it held the despair of a father trying to keep everything from falling apart. "He's crying again," she murmured to herself, feeling her chest tighten even more. And then, as if the universe decided to toy with her heart, the hallway door upstairs opened. Adam appeared, descending a few steps with Oliver in his arms. The natural light coming through the tall windows illuminated his tired face, revealing deep dark circles and the defeated expression of a man who no longer knew how to go on. Adam's eyes met Grace's. He held Oliver carefully, but his arms trembled slightly. The baby cried loudly, his face red, his tiny body arched. "Sorry for the noise," Adam said in a low tone, almost embarrassed, trying to straighten himself up. "He just won't get better." Grace felt something inside her break. The baby's pain struck her maternal instinct so strongly it was impossible to ignore. And Adam's state, so vulnerable, so different from the powerful man everyone imagined, stirred a true, almost urgent compassion in her. She stepped forward without even realizing it, guided by something greater than professional rules. M.R. Reynolds, he seems to be in a lot of discomfort. Adam took a deep breath, pressing his lips together as he tried to rock Oliver. The baby kept crying, sobbing between gasps. "I've tried everything," he said, his voice cracking. "I don't know what else to do." Grace stood still, watching the two of them. The scene was so intense, so human, it pulled her in like a magnet. And in that moment, she had a strange feeling, like she was about to step into something that would change her life. Before she could even think of a response, Oliver lifted his little body and cried louder, the sound breaking through the house's silence. Grace placed her hand over her chest, feeling her maternal instinct fully take over. His cry wasn't just any cry. It was a plea for help, and she knew it. Adam took a few more careful steps down the stairs, trying to keep Oliver resting against his shoulder while the baby's crying reached new peaks of desperation. Grace remained still in the hall, hands gripping the clipboard, eyes locked on the scene unfolding before her. The contrast between the powerful man everyone knew and the vulnerable father before her was so striking. It filled the air with a silent tension. The light coming through the tall windows fell unevenly on Adam, highlighting his tousled dark blonde hair and the tired glimmer in his blue-gray eyes. His face, marked by deep under-eye circles, revealed sleepless nights and a pain he tried to hide from the world. Oliver, his cheeks red from crying, clutched the fabric of his father's shirt with tiny fingers, seeking comfort where he only found despair. "I am sorry for the noise," Adam said again, trying to lift his chin as if that could restore some fragment of the posture he once carried. His voice came out low, broken, like he was struggling not to show weakness. Grace didn't respond right away. She just looked at him, with eyes so human, so full of understanding, that Adam turned his face away for a moment. It wasn't pity. It was empathy from someone who knew pain. Someone who knew what it was like to carry the world alone and still keep going. She stepped forward as if guided by a deeper instinct. "He seems to be really uncomfortable. Reflux can do that to a baby." Adam's hand moved slightly, as if he meant to reposition Oliver, but he gave up halfway through the gesture. "I'm doing everything wrong, aren't I?" he asked, almost in a whisper. It was the first time his voice truly betrayed the insecurity eating him alive. Grace shook her head gently. "No, you're doing everything you can, and he feels that." Adam took a slow breath, as if her words brought unexpected relief. Still, he tried to shut down the emotion, regaining his usual cold composure. "I just don't want you to think I don't know how to care for my own son," he said, adjusting his shoulders, even though exhaustion made every movement heavy. Grace stepped closer, still respectful, but there was a softness in her gaze. Taking care doesn't mean knowing everything. It means trying, even when it feels impossible. Adam finally lifted his eyes to her. And in that instant, it happened. That shock of connection. A silent but powerful moment in which two very different kinds of pain recognized one another. The light caught in Grace's green eyes, revealing a quiet sadness mixed with strength. Adam, looking into them, felt a crack form in the emotional wall he'd kept up since his wife's death. He tried to look away, but couldn't. It was as if something inside him wanted to be seen, even if it meant being completely exposed. The baby cried again, burying his face into his father's neck, and Adam closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. When he opened them again, Grace was still there, steady, aware, present. I don't usually let anyone see things when they're like this," he admitted, surprised at the honesty in his own voice. It sounded like a confession pulled from deep within. Grace responded with quiet, steady confidence. Maybe that's exactly what you need. To stop carrying it all alone. The silence that followed was thick, heavy with something new. It wasn't just a pause between words. It was the start of understanding, a crack in the walls neither of them expected to open in that moment. Suddenly, a louder sob from Oliver broke the atmosphere. Grace took a small involuntary step forward as if to help, and Adam noticed. His gaze softened, just for a second, and that second was enough to shift the entire mood of the house. For the first time, he didn't push someone away. He didn't build walls. And in that quiet exchange, he let Grace see his pain. No mask, no pride, no protection. A simple gesture, but one that would change everything. The next morning, the mansion was quiet on the outside, but inside the chaos had resumed as if it had never stopped. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, but the light couldn't warm the tense atmosphere lingering on the second floor. Grace walked softly down the hallway, cleaning supplies in hand, trying to keep her head high despite the constant feeling that she didn't belong in that place. As she neared the baby's room, she heard crying. It was different from the day before, more intense, more painful. A cry that tore at the heart of anyone who could recognize the suffering of a baby in pain. Grace paused for a moment and took a deep breath. Something within her, a force much greater than her professional duties, pulled her toward the half-open door. When she gently pushed the door open, she found Adam sitting on the floor, leaning against the wall beside the crib. His dress shirt was wrinkled, with a faint streak of spit-up on the collar. His dark blonde hair was disheveled, and his face betrayed the long, sleepless night behind him. Oliver was crying in his arms, his tiny body arched, his face red, as if fighting against a pain he couldn't escape. Adam ran his hand along the baby's back, but his movements had lost all steadiness. He wasn't crying, but his eyes were wet, as if holding back emotion with everything he had. Grace felt her stomach clench. The scene was so raw, so painful, that for a moment she forgot entirely where she was. She took 2 steps forward, her voice almost a whisper. "Is he still struggling with reflux today?" Adam lifted his eyes slowly. The exhaustion pouring from them could disarm anyone. "Yeah, since early morning," he said in a low voice. "I've tried every position, but nothing works. I don't know what I'm doing wrong." He held Oliver a little tighter to his chest, as if trying to shield him from his own inability. Grace's heart broke at the sight of such raw vulnerability. This wasn't the untouchable millionaire everyone imagined. This was just a father lost. "May I come closer?" she asked. Adam hesitated for a second, not from distrust, but because his pride was still trying to resist. But he simply breathed deeply and gave a small nod. When Grace knelt beside him, the soft scent of lavender she wore blended with a light milky smell coming from Oliver. The young mother observed how Adam was holding the baby, and instinct took over. "Let me show you something," she said gently. She reached out slowly, and Adam handed Oliver over with a carefulness that showed just how afraid he was of failing again. Grace positioned the baby in her arms, raising his torso with a confident, practiced touch. Her movements were fluid, as if her body knew exactly what to do before her mind did. Oliver, still crying, relaxed just a little as he felt her hold. Some babies with reflux need to be like this, almost sitting up, resting on the chest, she explained softly. And slow movements help relieve the pressure. Adam watched her every gesture, almost mesmerized. The way Grace touched Oliver was so natural, so full of care, that something tightened in his chest. She seemed made to nurture. The way the baby responded to her presence awakened something in Adam, a mix of relief, admiration, and a feeling he couldn't name. I didn't know I could hold him like that, Adam confessed, pressing his fingers to his forehead, drained. I honestly thought I was just making things worse. Grace looked at him firmly. You're trying. That's already more than a lot of people would do. The sincerity in her voice made Adam exhale, like he was finally being allowed to breathe. It was rare for him to hear something that wasn't criticism or judgment since becoming a single father. Oliver let out a small hiccup and rested his little face on Grace's shoulder, seeking comfort. Adam saw it and swallowed hard. He trusts you, he said without thinking. Grace looked away briefly, shy. Babies can feel when someone's calm. I'm just used to it. Emma had a few tough episodes in the beginning too. The unexpected mention of her daughter's name touched Adam in a way he hadn't expected. Emma your baby, right? Grace nodded. Yes, she's taught me a lot about patience. Adam studied her for a few moments. Her hair tied back in a simple bun, a few strands falling loose around her face, her green eyes focused, her posture steady despite the situation. There was something deeply comforting about her, something that made the heavy air feel a little less suffocating. I don't know how to thank you, he said, his voice too soft for a man used to controlling everything. It's like you just know exactly what to do. Grace smiled faintly, rocking Oliver gently. I'm just helping. Any mother would. But Adam knew, from the tone in her voice, that wasn't true. Not everyone would help. Not everyone would offer kindness without expecting something in return. And when Oliver finally let out a softer cry, almost a relieved breath, Adam felt something crack open inside him. Something hard and locked away, beginning to slowly melt in the presence of this simple, strong, and unexpectedly important woman. The feeling scared him. Because, without even realizing it, he was starting to trust her. And he hadn't trusted anyone like that since before the tragedy that changed his life. The silence that settled over the room after Oliver finally calmed down felt almost sacred. Grace still held him gently, his tiny body resting against her shoulder as she moved her hand in slow circles across his back. Adam watched the scene like someone witnessing the impossible. His son, who had cried through the entire night, was now nearly asleep, soothed by the sound of this woman's calm breathing. But the peace didn't last. The sharp sound of heels echoed down the hallway, slicing through the tender atmosphere like a blade. Adam's eyes widened slightly. He knew that rhythm. Precise, cold, unforgiving. It could only mean one person. The door opened without a knock. A tall woman entered, dressed in flawless elegance. Her gray hair was pulled into a perfect bun, her pearl necklace gleaming under the light, her upright posture radiating authority. Eleanor Reynolds. Presence was impossible to ignore, and so was the icy chill in her blue eyes as she scanned the room with clinical precision. The moment she saw Grace kneeling on the floor, holding her grandson, her expression twisted into a mix of shock and indignation. Adam Reynolds. What is going on here? Her voice sliced through the air like shrapnel. Grace froze. Her entire body seemed to shrink under the weight of that cutting gaze. The luxurious room, already intimidating, now felt outright hostile. Adam stood up quickly, clearing his throat as if trying to reassemble his composure. Mom, she's just helping. Oliver was in pain but Eleanor didn't let him finish. These people don't know their place. Each word was laced with disdain, sharp enough to wound anyone within reach. Grace stood completely still. She didn't even breathe. She felt the blood drain from her face and a hot wave rise in her chest, a mix of humiliation and injustice. It wasn't just a rebuke, it was a verdict. A cruel reminder that in this world, she would always be seen as less. Adam took half a step forward, jaw tight. Mom, please. Don't talk like that. She is overstepping boundaries that are not hers, Eleanor snapped, lifting her chin. You can't allow just anyone to lay hands on your son, Adam. It's irresponsible. The words hit Grace like invisible blows. She lowered her eyes, trying to hide the pain that bloomed behind them. Carefully, with heartbreaking gentleness, she returned Oliver to Adam's arms. Her voice came out barely audible as she stepped back. I'm sorry, I only wanted to help. Adam saw the look on her face, and something tore inside him. That dormant instinct roared to life again. This wasn't just about gratitude. This was outrage. Outrage at watching someone so kind be treated with such cruelty. Enough, Mom. This time, his voice was firmer. Grace did nothing wrong. I asked for her help. Eleanor turned to him like he just committed blasphemy. You're vulnerable, Adam, and people like this take advantage of that. Grace closed her eyes for a second. Not because of the insult itself, she was used to being underestimated, but because it stung more than she expected to feel seen like that. Misjudged, erased. As always, forced to prove her worth before she could simply be. She took a deep breath, gathered her clipboard, and clung to the last shred of dignity she had left. I'll get back to my work, she said with a fragile smile, her voice barely steady. She walked out of the room quickly, chest tight, not because an arrogant woman had humiliated her, but because, for a fleeting moment, she'd felt like Adam truly trusted her. And losing that feeling, even for a second, hurt more than she was ready to admit. Adam followed her with his eyes, something stirring deep in his chest. Something had shifted in him since the day before. And now, that shift had taken shape. And it was strong enough to make him stand up to his own mother. The rain had started in the late afternoon, first as a soft drizzle tapping against the tall windows of the mansion, then building into a full-blown storm with thunder that made the floor tremble. Outside, the wind howled through the tall garden trees. Inside, the storm was of a different kind, one born of exhaustion, fear, and detention that had been building for far too long. Grace was in the kitchen, wiping the counter, when she heard the first piercing cry from Oliver. It was different this time. She didn't need to go upstairs to know. Her body recognized that sound the way it recognized Emma's. It was pain. A cry that burned from the inside. She dropped the cloth immediately. The rain intensified against the window, but not even that could drown out the sound of the baby's suffering echoing through the house. As Grace rushed up the stairs, she heard another sound, the splash of spilled formula hitting the floor. At the second-floor hallway, she saw Adam at the nursery door, his face stricken, his shirt soaked and stained. Oliver arched in his arms, screaming. The bottle still lay on the floor, surrounded by a puddle of milk. No, not again, Adam murmured, his voice shaking. When he saw Grace, his eyes were full of something raw, the silent plea of someone on the edge. Grace, please, his voice cracked mid-sentence, breaking under a desperation he couldn't hide. She didn't hesitate. She ran to him, arms out. Adam handed Oliver over so quickly his hands trembled. The baby was flushed red, cheeks wet with tears, chest heaving with ragged, frantic sobs. Every attempt to take a breath only made the milk come back up. Grace placed him on her shoulder at once, raising his torso, instinctively repeating the same technique as the day before. But this time, it wasn't working. Oliver's crying came in relentless waves, each more desperate than the last. She rubbed his back in slow circles, whispering softly, It's okay, little one. It's okay." Adam stood frozen, helpless. His face was so tense, his jaw so clenched it visibly pulsed. His hands opened and closed uselessly in the air. He looked smaller somehow, worn down. "Why is this happening?" he asked, his voice cracking. I did everything right. I bought every formula, every brand they recommended. I followed all the instructions. Grace kept rocking Oliver, who now arched harder as if something inside him was burning. She looked at Adam, and what she saw was a man completely destroyed. "Sometimes it's no one's fault," she said gently. "It's his little system. It's the reflux. He's just hurting, Adam." A thunderclap rattled the window. Oliver choked slightly on his sobs, and the entire room filled with panic. Grace adjusted her position, raising Oliver more upright, gently patting his lower back and hips, trying everything she knew, everything she'd learned through experience, not books, but it wasn't working. "It's not getting better, why isn't it better?" Adam muttered, pacing back and forth, running a hand through his hair, gripping it like he could pull the frustration out by force. "He'll calm down," Grace said, trying to keep her voice steady, though her own heart felt like it was breaking. "No, he won't." Adam's shout burst out before he could stop it. He turned toward her, but there was no anger in his eyes, only fear. "I don't know what else to do. I don't sleep. I can't think. I just want him to be okay." Another jet of formula came up, spilling down Grace's shoulder. She didn't flinch. She just kept holding Oliver like she was cradling the very heart of the world. Adam stopped in the middle of the room. His shoulders dropped. He looked at the baby, then at Grace, and all the air seemed to leave his body. And that's when the mask finally cracked. He covered his face with both hands and, for the first time since his wife's death, he cried. Not a quiet cry. A deep, broken sob, muffled by his hands, but louder than any thunder outside. A cry full of guilt, pain, helplessness, the kind that rips out from the chest and takes a piece of you with it. Grace looked up at him, Oliver still trembling in her arms, and saw not the powerful man the world revered, but just a father in collapse. "Adam," she said softly, like someone calling a soul back from the edge. He let his hands fall slowly. His eyes were red, swollen, completely exposed. "I can't do this alone," he admitted, voice shattering like glass. Grace felt the weight of those words deep in her bones. Something passed through her, empathy, pain, and a fierce maternal urge to protect not just the baby, but this broken father too. And in Adam, something stirred, something he had buried with his grief. A part of him long sealed off began to awaken. The storm outside raged on, but the one inside that house had just gotten even stronger. The storm outside raged on, hammering the windows with gusts of wind and heavy rain. But inside that room, a different kind of hurricane was at its peak. Oliver's desperate cries, Adam's trembling hands, and Grace's pounding heart as she tried to stay calm, rocking the baby who seemed to find no relief. Adam's breathing was still erratic after breaking down. He wiped his face with the back of his hand, trying to pull himself together, but the anguish was all over him. Oliver, resting on Grace's shoulder, sobbed hard, still clearly in pain. And then, something small but unmistakable happened. In the middle of his crying, the baby drew in a deep breath as his cheek pressed against Grace's chest. His little body relaxed for just a second, like he was recognizing something familiar, something safe. Grace felt it. Not just saw it, felt it in her own chest, that tiny shift. That moment when a baby stops fighting because they've found human comfort. Her heart surged with a mix of instinct and fear. She kept rocking Oliver gently, but her eyes changed. They sharpened with recognition. She knew this behavior. It was exactly what Emma used to do when nothing else worked except nursing. Oliver inhaled again, his warm cheek resting against her like he was seeking something deeper than warmth. Adam noticed. He stopped for a bit, he said hoarsely, his voice filled with a hope so fragile it seemed made of glass. Grace hesitated, her throat dried. Her mind raced. Professionalism, boundaries, fear, the social gap between them. But louder than all of that was something else, motherhood. That intuitive force that knew what a baby needed long before words were necessary. Adam, she began, her voice shaking, some babies with reflux, sometimes they can digest breast milk better. The silence that followed was as heavy as the storm outside. Adam blinked slowly, trying to process what she was saying. The confusion, fear, and faint glimmer of hope in his eyes were almost painful to witness. "You're saying he couldn't finish." The weight of the idea and what it meant stole the words from his mouth. Grace held Oliver close, feeling his body slowly trying to settle between sobs. "I know it sounds crazy, and I know it crosses a huge line. But he's exhausted, in pain. I don't want to overstep. I just want to help. I just want the pain to stop." Her voice trembled, not from uncertainty, but from the emotional gravity of the moment. Adam ran a hand through his hair, breathing deeply as if every major decision in his life flashed before him. His wife's death, the traumatic birth, the sleepless nights, and now Grace offering a solution he never imagined. When he finally looked up at her, something had changed. There were no more walls, no more fear, just trust. Absolute, raw trust. "If you think it could help, please," he said, more sincerely than he had spoken to anyone since becoming a widower. Grace nodded slowly. Gently, she sat in the nearby armchair, keeping Oliver elevated. She adjusted him carefully, making sure everything was safe, respectful, and calm, then offered her breast. He latched immediately. Naturally, instinctively, like he knew exactly where peace was, and then it happened. Oliver nursed, no reflux. No pain-filled cries, no gasping for breath. The entire room seemed to stop. The storm outside faded into a distant hum. Adam's ragged breathing stilled. It was as if the entire universe had hit pause just to bear witness to that moment. Adam stepped closer without even realizing it. His face softened in a way Grace had never seen. His eyes welled up again, but this time with something else. "My God, is he okay?" he asked, barely audible. Grace looked down at the baby, now nursing calmly, and whispered, "He's finally at peace." Adam brought a hand to his mouth, overwhelmed. It was like watching a miracle. For the first time since his birth, Oliver looked free, at rest, whole. I don't know what to say," Adam murmured, his voice cracking. "I've never seen him like this." Grace didn't respond. She didn't need to. The moment spoke for itself. Oliver suckled softly, resting against her, and Adam watched with something like reverence in his eyes, as though witnessing something divine, pure and incomprehensibly human. A bond was born right then. Between the baby who found relief, the woman who gave more than nourishment, she gave herself, and the man who, for the first time in so long, wasn't alone. And in that room lit by flashes of lightning, 3 lives were changed without another word. The storm from the night before had left its mark on the city, but inside the mansion, the atmosphere was surprisingly lighter. Oliver slept peacefully in his crib, breathing softly, his face relaxed for the first time since he was born. Adam stood beside him, watching his son sleep as if witnessing a miracle. His eyes were still red, but something new lived in them now, peace. Grace, tired but relieved, gently adjusted the baby's blanket. The soft light from the lamp lit her face, revealing a quiet serenity, as if, for that moment, all the pain she carried had faded into the background. But peace, in that house, never lasted long. The sharp sound of determined footsteps in the hallway made Adam stand up at once. He knew that rhythm, rigid, calculated, the walk of someone who never arrived unannounced and always brought consequences. When the door swung open without so much as a knock, Eleanor Reynolds entered like a cold front, draining all warmth from the room. Dressed in an elegant wool coat, her silver hair perfectly styled, her pearl necklace catching the light, her face was set with indignation ready to erupt. She stopped in her tracks when she saw the scene. Grace beside the crib, her light brown hair slightly messy, her gaze gentle and fixed on Oliver. Adam close to her, too close, closer than Eleanor ever allowed with anyone she didn't deem appropriate. And the baby, asleep in utter peace, something Eleanor hadn't witnessed in weeks. Her expression shifted from shock to fury. "What exactly is happening here?" she asked, her voice ice-sharp. Adam moved quickly to intervene. I can explain." But she raised her hand, silencing him with a single cutting gesture. Her gaze locked on Grace, who stood up quickly, adjusting her blouse with involuntary nervousness. "You've crossed every acceptable boundary," Eleanor said, stepping forward. "I knew I couldn't trust people like you." Grace felt her chest cave in. Her face burned. It wasn't just an accusation, it was an assault on her dignity. Adam took a deep breath. "Mom, please, don't speak like that." She didn't. "Don't speak like that?" Eleanor echoed, now burning with anger. "She breastfed my grandson without consent, without any proper hygiene, without any protocol. It's unthinkable." Her words hit the room like a lightning strike. Grace flinched, feeling shame and guilt crawl under her skin, even though she knew she had saved that child from suffering. She tried to speak, her voice reaching for strength but cracking with humiliation. "I only wanted to help." He was in pain. "Pain?" Eleanor scoffed with a sharp, cold laugh. "And you decided it was your place to do that? Do you actually believe you belong here?" Grace swallowed hard. What hurt wasn't just Eleanor's cruelty, it was Adam's silence. Even though his face showed emotion, even though it was clear he was moved, he didn't act. He didn't protect her. He hesitated. He was caught, frozen between his mother's disapproval and Grace's pleading eyes. "She did nothing wrong," Adam said, but his voice lacked conviction. It trembled, thin and fragile, not strong enough to shield anyone. That hesitation struck Grace like a blade. And her heart broke, not because of Eleanor's judgment, but because of Adam's indecision. This man who had cried in her presence, who had trusted her with his most precious being, was now retreating. An invisible door slammed shut between them, and Grace understood. She had to leave before she let herself be torn down any further. With trembling hands, she walked to the side table and picked up her things. Her eyes burned, but she blinked repeatedly, trying to preserve some thread of dignity. Adam took a step forward. "Grace, wait." "Please." She shook her head slightly, stopping him. "I only wanted to help," she said, her voice thick with emotion. 5 words. But they held the weight of wounded pride, disappointment, and a deep sadness she hadn't expected to feel. The image of Oliver nursing calmly was still vivid in her memory, but now it felt like a fragile dream, already dissolving under the weight of a world that refused to accept her. With her chest tight, she walked out of the room, descending the stairs quickly. Each step felt like it was tearing something from her. In the entryway, she grabbed her bag and opened the door with a shaking hand. The rain had returned, soft now, but still cold. Hours later, Grace sat in the community daycare, Emma asleep in her arms. Her daughter's tiny body offered the only warmth she needed. She held her tightly, as if trying to rebuild herself through that small, breathing piece of love. Back at the mansion, in the silence that followed, Adam stood in the hallway, staring at the space Grace had just left behind. and the weight of her absence hit him like a wave. For the first time, he understood what it meant to lose someone because of fear, and that marked him more than any sleepless night ever had. The house hadn't been the same since Grace walked out the door. The silence was no longer peaceful, it hurt. Her soft footsteps no longer echoed through the hallway. The quiet calm she carried like a second skin was gone, and all that remained was the storm echoing in Oliver's cries. Adam paced the room with his son in his arms, face tight with worry, shirt wrinkled just like before. But now, there was something different in his expression, emptiness. Oliver wailed, his little body arching, spitting up bits of formula just like before, maybe worse. Adam tried everything Grace had done. Every hold, every angle, every gentle stroke. Nothing worked. I know it hurts. Buddy, I promise it'll pass, he murmured, voice cracking. But he knew it wasn't true. Not as long as Grace wasn't there. That night, after finally coaxing Oliver into a few minutes of sleep, Adam descended the stairs slowly. He found his mother in the sitting room, sipping tea as if the house hadn't just lost the only person who brought it peace. The room was cold, elegant, perfect, and suffocating. You look pale, Eleanor said, not looking up. You can't allow that girl to keep interfering in family matters. Adam felt the heat rise in his chest. For the first time in his life, he didn't swallow it. She saved my son, he said firmly. Eleanor looked up, startled by the sharpness in his voice. She crossed a line. You need to control who enters your life, who enters Oliver's life. Adam took a deep breath, trying to stay composed. Mom, that's not control. That's fear. Fear is a form of protection. No, he said, stepping closer. It's a prison. And you want me to raise Oliver in the same prison you built around me. Her eyes widened. I did everything for you. You did, and you also made it so I never trusted anyone. Never let anyone get close. And now I lost the only person who actually helped my son because I was afraid of standing up to you. The silence between them was heavy, suffocating. Adam, she tried. No. He raised his hand, stopping her for the first time in his life. I won't live like you. And I won't raise Oliver that way. Eleanor opened her mouth, but no words came. Adam exhaled, his voice steady and final. I'm going to find her. He turned, walked up the stairs, grabbed his jacket, settled Oliver in the stroller, and walked out without a glance back. The rain was light again, misting his hair, but for the first time in weeks, he felt like he had direction. The path to the modest neighborhood where Grace lived felt longer than it really was. When he finally reached the small apartment building, he stood at her door for a moment, took a breath, and knocked. She opened the door a few seconds later, Emma in her arms. Her eyes were red, her face tired, hair pulled back hastily. She froze when she saw him. Adam? Her voice came low, like she didn't believe it was real. He stepped in, just enough for her to see the sincerity in his eyes. No rush, no pride, no armor. He was a man undone but determined. Grace, he began, but his voice faltered. He took another breath and tried again. I'm sorry, for everything. For not defending you, for letting fear control me. Grace held Emma tighter, trying to hold herself together. You don't owe me anything. I did what any mother would do. He shook his head. No, you did more. You gave my son relief when no one else could. You were there when I had nothing left to give. And I let them hurt you because I was too afraid to stand up. Her eyes welled with tears. Adam continued, voice thick with emotion. I promise, nothing like that will happen again. I need you. Oliver needs you, and I do too. Grace brought a hand to her mouth, holding back the sob that rose with his final words. I do too. It broke through every wall she thought she'd rebuilt. She had sworn never to trust like that again, not after Daniel. Never to open that door again. But standing there, before a man who wasn't hiding from his failures, who saw her, who admitted his brokenness and asked for her, something stirred inside her. Trust. Grace's green eyes shimmered with emotion. Adam took one more step, cautiously, as if even breathing too hard might scare the moment away. And for the first time since they met, she didn't pull away. The apartment had been quiet since Adam's visit, but Grace's heart was still racing. His words echoed in her mind, the sincerity, the apology, the vulnerability she never imagined she'd see in that man. Something deep inside her, something she thought had been frozen since Daniel died, was beginning to pulse again, timid, but real. The next morning, Adam returned. Not with arrogance, not with pressure. He knocked on her door like someone afraid to lose what they'd just begun to find. When Grace opened it, hesitant, there he was. No suit, no powerful businessman mask, just a man with a baby in his arms and hope in his eyes. "I just wanted to see how you're doing," he said, holding Oliver with his usual gentle care, "and to ask if we could talk." Grace took a breath, glanced at Emma, then at Oliver, then at Adam. She stepped aside and opened the door. And in that simple gesture, there was more than permission. There was possibility. On the small couch in her modest living room, with their children nearby, they talked. No rush. No masks. Adam admitted his mistakes, shared his fears, and asked for a second chance, not as an employer, but as someone who needed her presence in his life. Grace, still wounded, listened in silence. And for the first time, there was no judgment in her eyes, only understanding. Days later, she agreed to return to the Reynolds house. But not the way it had been before. She made her terms clear, her space, her boundaries, her worth. "If I come back, it will be as Oliver's caregiver and as someone who wants to be part of his well-being. I won't be treated as someone disposable." Adam nodded without hesitation. "I don't want you as an employee. I want you as part of his path. And mine too." When Grace entered the mansion again, something had changed. The place no longer felt so cold. Emma, in her arms, looked at Adam with wide, curious eyes. He smiled at the little girl, a genuine smile that caught both of them off guard. "Can I hold her?" he asked gently. Grace hesitated, then handed Emma over. Adam held her with surprising ease. Emma wrapped her tiny hand around his finger, and something shifted in Grace's chest. Watching this man, still marked by grief, find gentleness in her daughter's eyes, it was something she never expected to witness. In the days that followed, a new rhythm settled in. Grace helped feed Oliver, tracked every reaction, and taught Adam how to recognize signs he used to miss. Adam included her in decisions about the baby, valued her opinions, and asked for her advice. And Emma? He treated her with the same care he gave Oliver. Held her stroller when they went for walks, warmed her bottles with unexpected patience, smiled each time she laughed. Their relationship didn't blossom through grand declarations or dramatic gestures. It grew quietly in the details, in lingering glances, in the smiles they no longer tried to hide, in conversations that stretched longer with each day after the kids had fallen asleep. One evening, as they watched Oliver sleeping after a mild reflux episode, Adam whispered, "I thought my life ended when I lost my wife. I thought all that was left was duty and fear. But you brought color back to everything that used to be gray." Grace looked at him, surprised, her eyes shimmering. "I only did what felt right." He shook his head, smiling gently. "No, you brought love into this house, and I didn't know how badly I needed it." She looked down, breath-catching. He reached out, not touching her, just waiting. When she finally lifted her face, their eyes met, like that first time, but now there was something new. Trust. They didn't kiss then. They didn't need to. What bonded them was deeper than physical affection. It was the healing of wounds that had found refuge in one another. It was the start of something strong, built slowly, step by step, with respect for scars too deep to be rushed. In the weeks that followed, Oliver improved. His reflux crises eased, the crying faded. His smile began to appear, often. It was as if love, born from two people so different, yet so connected, had become the best medicine. And on one peaceful afternoon, as Adam held Oliver and Grace rocked Emma, he looked at her with a tenderness that filled the air. I thought I'd lost everything, but now I see life had to fall apart to make room for something new. Something I never imagined. Grace smiled, her eyes glistening with quiet tears. Sometimes, the most unlikely connections are the ones that save us. The silence that followed was heavy with something pure, intense, and true. The kind of silence that only exists when two hearts finally find peace in each other's presence. And so, through second chances, tears, growth, and love built day by day, they discovered the greatest lesson life had to offer. Sometimes the heart has to break to learn how to love again. And love, when born from pain, can be the strongest bond of all. And that's how this story of second chances, courage, and unexpected love comes to an end. Now I want to hear from you. What did you think? Leave your rating in the comments from 0 to 10 and tell me how deeply this story touched your heart. If you liked it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more powerful stories like this one. And before you go, I've got another emotional story lined up, one that will move you even more. Don't miss it.